All right, welcome back, folks. Welcome to another episode of the TED Talk. Another not interview, but another show, another type of podcast where we're going to be unraveling some of the and talking about some of the action happening over at the major. The reason we're doing this right now, and the reason I'm not alone, is because obviously when I'm doing those alone and when I'm trying to do the pickems, I'm completely terrible at it. So now I've actually invited someone who's got a brain for the game. And is going to help me out actually get an idea on what to expect in the playoffs. And we're going to talk about all the storylines and things that happen in stage 3. My utmost pleasure to welcome my neighbor. We don't live in obviously in the same building or whatever, but neighbor countries. So it's Janko. I'm sure I don't really need to introduce, but for those of you that for whatever reason have been living under a rock and don't know, a broadcast analyst right now, used to be a professional coach for teams like FaZe Clan, and of course used to be a professional player in Serbia as well back in the day. So Janko, thank you for coming over. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. This is the most tanned that I will ever get.
All right.
Considering my paleness, yeah, I just went for a quick vacation over to Greece, another
Mm.
kind of neighboring country. I guess I want to say, despite the experience equally bad at Pickems, stage 2 wrecked me this year. And what was the last one? Yeah, I was never a professional player because to be a professional player, you have to get paid. And we were never
Right.
salaried. We were
Sure.
just, we were at that time, like there was very few teams that were getting salaried. So, but yeah,
Wasn't
we
iNation
played some CS.
iNation wasn't salaried when you played in there? You played on
No,
iNation, right?
yeah, I did, but we weren't salaried then. We were just winging it. And when we had a couple of orgs, they didn't pay us. It was, it was the jerseys and the server and like it
Sure.
used to be in the early days.
Sure.
Changed now, of course, with
Yeah.
the sticker money and everything else.
I think that's what we counted as pro players back. Well, I say we. I was like 8 years old back then, but it's what was counted as professional play back then. It was like the fact that you could be good enough to actually cover your cost to travel on an event with your placement. That meant that you were already classified as fairly good. When you compare it to nowadays, but yeah, you said you were at a vacation. Did you do the old school esports classic where you're just going out with the family and you're just sat there in dinner with your phone open and watching the games? I trust you've been following what was going on in the major.
No, I mean I've been following the results, but I haven't really watched much
Mm,
of the games. To be honest, I was just trying to, when I do get time off, which isn't super often, like April and May were super busy with tournaments, so I just disconnect for the most part and just spend quality time with the family. But I was, keeping up with the results, scores, try to catch a couple of interviews here and there, just so I have a feel, for how things have been going on at the major, obviously. And then I was back for stage 3, so managed to watch some games actually for a change. And yeah, we'll keep up with the playoffs.
Okay, that's good because this is what we're going to be talking about. Now, before we go into the stage 3 conversation, and we're going to talk about some of the teams that made a good impression and some of the ones that didn't, I want to start it off with the Falcons conversation. And the reason I want to start it off with the Falcons conversation, obviously, you have an opinion on it. Obviously, Nico's a player that's really close to your heart, and it's a team that I guess it's not even the fact that you have an opinion on it, it's the fact that everyone should, because they were supposed to be a contender for the entire thing. They got only one win in stage 2. And I just want to know what do you make out of it? Are you looking at the project then? Because I saw that opinion for a lot of people saying it's the management again letting the players know that there will be changes before the most important event of the year, and that kind of messes up with it. Or do you think they just couldn't deliver? They just couldn't perform?
I don't think that was the issue, right? I mean, they had the
Hmm.
same thing in Bucharest, and they went on to win the tournament. And Dexter, who was getting replaced, ended up being the MVP. I also think Magisk is a professional, right? And even if he maybe knew about it or that's going to be the case, I think you could see in the way he played a little bit in his performance that it's not like he didn't care whatsoever. Especially, I mean, it would be different if they were struggling a lot, but they were the second best team in the world behind Vitality,
Hmm.
really, from the last couple of months. So when you're in a position like that and you objectively have a chance to win the major, like you're going to do your best to try and get one, even if you're on the way out. So, I mean, I don't think obviously it's a huge failure in terms of the result, but I don't think it's that easy to point fingers. I think
Sure.
collectively they just failed. They just crumbled under the pressure. Really, it's the nature of the majors. I mean, the format is definitely inferior, but the format adds to the pressure, because if it were just best of threes, it wouldn't matter as much that it's the major, because you would get enough opportunities and teams would feel better about it. You play two best of ones in one day and you can be 0-2 after day one. Like, that's the scary part for a lot of these teams. And you look at Falcons' first game against Bait,
Yeah.
and in the first half they win 3 rounds and they get reset every single time, right? Like, they can't get any momentum. They can't play from ahead in any of these games. Falcons, who are one of the best pistol round teams in the world, were the worst team in pistol rounds in stage 2. It was abysmal. They were 3-something, 3-15, or I don't know. And out of the 3 that they won, they lost the second round 2 times.
Yeah.
And that's just in MR12. Really, you can either lose pistols, or you can lose some rounds you're not supposed to, rounds with advantages or something along those lines, but you can't do both. If you do both, you're not going to be able to win games. Doesn't matter who you're playing against. And that was the issue that plagued them. They just could never really get going. Even the OG game, first map, they're 9-3 up. Great.
Yeah.
They're back on day 2. They managed to reset, but then again, I think that they lose that map, are able to win
They
2-1
they
in
were
the end.
9-3 up on Dust and they lost the map, yeah, and they
Yeah.
barely won it in the end.
And then you go and you're like, Falcons know this as well as anyone watching. Is like, this is not supposed to be this close. So that's not going to fill you up with confidence. And then you go into the game against MIBR, where again it's closed, and Inferno comes along, and then you have that 5v3 round. That just is one of the things where the inexplicable happens, and then the timing is the worst as well. You look at that round, and especially when the comms got out too, and
Yeah.
why does m0NESY feel the need to move anywhere? Just chill, just watch Banana. And
Yeah.
as soon as he moves, half a second later, Breno shows up. The timing catches Tess a little bit off guard. He just sort of swings without coming. They both die. m0NESY misses a shot. If he hits that shot, the round's over pretty much. The Falcons win. Nico gets pre-fired in dark. Kixan is 1 HP in pool, but he got to 1 HP because sort of they had Banana. They wanted to get someone pool, so he started running from pillar to pool, but which is kind of wild to do, in a 5v3 when you have the bomb down. Then the smoke cleared from ruins and he got tagged to 1 HP. So it's just like some crazy stuff going on. And yeah, Nico had a bad Inferno regulation, especially, but I don't think you can put the exit on him. Really, he was their best player in a lot of those games. m0NESY was sort of slow to get into the tournament on day one. That's the problem. Is like you have one off day and you're 0-2, and you could see, for example, a team like Mouse, even like it took everything they got and Legacy choking a little bit for them to be able to climb back from 0-2 to make it into the playoffs. It just doesn't matter who's in there. It's very difficult to come back from 0-2 all the way to 3-2.
That's the fun part for me, or interesting part for me, though, because if we're looking at what do we want out of a major? For A, do we want it to be entertaining? B, do we want it to be given the highest possible chance to the best teams in the world to decide between themselves who's the best? Because if we're putting the trust in I don't know, just the team, because look at what Spirit did. People will just point fingers and say, well, look at Spirit, they won their BO1s really easily, right? But what you said will happen sometimes. You're going to be a little bit cold. It's MR12. Money on the CT side especially is quite lackluster. So sometimes you will start well, or you will start badly, and you won't be able to get into the game. Is that the way that we want to see some of the best teams in the world lose? And then there's going to be the counter argument for a lot of people. Can you call those teams the best in the world if this is how they lose? Which is the, I guess, main argument that I've seen online for people actually defending BO1s, saying you can't be the best if you can't perform in BO1s and BO3s as well. But isn't that entire system a little bit flawed now? And aren't we seeing that it is, with Falcons not making it out, and Vitality, which has been the best team by far in 2025 and maybe one of the best teams in the history of the game, losing a BO1 and losing their streak to Legacy?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's probably one of the best examples. I mean, they're on a 30 match win streak
Yeah, 30
at this
BO3s
point
and
in time,
BO5s.
and then BO1 comes along and they lose that, and the streak is over, right? But I don't necessarily buy into the argument, oh yeah, the best teams need to win best of ones as well. Like, yeah, in theory, but there's more randomness in a best of one,
Yeah.
right? Like, you need fewer rounds to win in MR12. So if, let's say, you win both pistols and convert, and you get the reset after you lose the first gun round, but get the reset, all of a sudden you're 5-1 up. That's,
Half a map.
50% of the half is over, right?
Yeah.
And you do the same in the second half, or like in the Falcons game, like we said, where they get reset every single time, and that can happen in a map. If that happens in a best of 3 2 times, well, then you can't really complain about it. And the other team was just really better in those key rounds, and the better team won. I don't think, especially with the economy, that's the problem, because you still have the 1400 hard reset exists. So if you happen to lose the second round, let's say on the CT side, right, you won't get an op until round 7 or 8, right? And it's just, for some maps and for some teams, that's very difficult to sort of play around. And I just think it's unnecessary. I mean, Christ's sakes, every single other tournament doesn't have best of ones anymore. So now we have the biggest one, supposedly, in the scene that has the most inferior format. And I think for what the major is supposed to be, I think Valve was very clear that the major isn't about determining who the best team in the world is. That isn't their goal. Their goal is just to celebrate Counter-Strike, right? For all the players out there, sort of put on a tournament that showcases the best players in the world for everyone to enjoy. So they don't necessarily care about, like, proving who the best team in the circuit is. That isn't the main thing that drives them to put these tournaments on. And I know their argument at times was, well, didn't the best team still win in a way, right? Like, or the
Sure.
teams that made it to the playoffs for the most part are the teams that are supposed to be there. And yeah, when you look at it, it kind of is the case, except for a couple of majors. Paris obviously is the first one that comes to mind. And here, luckily for the viewers, it's just Falcons who didn't really make it. Well, I guess someone would say Aurora too, but they wouldn't do much anyway if they were in the playoffs, to be honest. So I don't know. I think it just, I wouldn't expect it to change. I think people are saying, oh, they're going to change it for Budapest. I don't think so. I think we're going to keep the same format, at least for Budapest, and then I don't know for next year. But honestly, also now you look at it and it's like stage 1. Who wants to see these teams play best of 3s, man?
That is the
you want to
thing.
have
Yeah.
you want to see Nip Amcal best of 3s all over again?
It's not even Nip Amcal. It's even worse sometimes for some of the folks. But can we mix them? That's what I've been thinking about. Like, can we just say the final 16 only stage 3 is BO3s only, and before that you just give them the BO1, so it could be a little bit quicker. It could be a bit
Unfortunately, I don't think you can do that, because then, I mean, the tournament has different formats depending on the stage, right? I think it would have to be universal for all 3 stages. But honestly, Major is the worst, man. Major has the worst format in the circuit, and it's not even close. Why do we have like top 8 teams not play for two stages? It's kind of crazy. Like, you have a tournament where not all teams are playing. Like, why is this a thing? How did it come to this? And now we've all just accepted it. The only other examples are Cologne and Katowice, where you have the play-in, right? But it's only a couple of days, and it's there to determine the top 8 teams. So it's not a huge deal in that case. But for the major, and with how many stages we have now and everything, it just feels a little bit it's getting a little bit silly at this point.
Yeah, I guess the only upside of it is that it does provide a lot of financial stability to some of the smaller orgs. Because if you qualify now that there's 32 spots for a lot of those teams, this is money for the players, for the organizations. They can keep going. So this is I think in my eyes, because I've talked to some players as well about it, and even with the players, there's mixed feelings, and that's what they were telling me as well. That for smaller organizations, if they get, let's say, the guys that are going to be between the 25th and 32nd place, most of them are not going to be the massive orgs that have finances for years to come. I mean, some of the bigger orgs don't have finances for years to come. So in that sense is good, I think. But I completely agree with you. I feel like maybe the prestige to some extent is being lost on the way. With that being said, we are going to get into stage 3 and what happened there. So for those of the people watching right now that for example, missed it for whatever reason. Spirit and Furia 3-0, FaZe, Navi, and Vitality 3-1, and then the Mongos, Pain, and Mouse got their wins in the last day, and all those games were a little bit labored. Every single one of them. I had the utmost pleasure of having to stay up until 5 a.m. to cast all of it, and it was great. Especially the last one, especially the way that Virtus.pro scarred me for life, and I was really disappointed. But I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. And then obviously we had the 0-3 of Liquid and Amiga, and everyone in between, 3D Max, Lim Vision, Aurora, G2. Didn't make it with Legacy and VP. So taking a look at that, we're gonna start it off with the negative part first. But which are
Of course, we are from the Balkans.
we are Balkan. We are Balkan. Yeah, if there was a Balkan team, we would have already started chatting shit about them. But unfortunately, 500 is good enough, so we can't even speak about them right now. Or I would have had the chance. So which are the teams that you expected to do maybe a little bit better and that left a sour taste in your mouth? You can name one. You can name two.
I think definitely Aurora.
Sure.
I expected them to make the playoffs, and when you look at also losing to G2 in a very convincing manner on Inferno, playing Dust 2 and losing it to Furia as well. Okay, the Mouse game was close, but yeah, that was just really disappointing for me because they made playoffs every single tournament they attended this year, and now the major comes along and they're just unable to do it. I'm not sure if the pressure got to them. Like, unfortunately, their one best of 3 was against Mouse.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't necessarily blame them for losing to Mouse, but that's what you get for losing to G2, right? If they won that game, I think it would have been them who would have played Navi, and they're probably the favorite in that particular matchup. So yeah, I think Aurora is the first one, and I mean, Liquid is the easy one, but honestly, I never expected Liquid to go through.
Yeah.
Like, Liquid just seems completely off. Doesn't seem like they connected at all with this lineup. Naf is, obviously had the worst season of his career and just isn't able to get anything going. They don't have a proper coach behind them. And that's the thing. When you have so many big names and big players, you need to have a coach. Like, and
Sure.
not just anyone, right? Like, you need to have someone who's going to keep those guys in check. Like, who's going to tell Twist, listen, man, just play the game, you know? Like, don't worry about some of this other stuff. Like, just focus on your own game. Like, we have an IGL now, right? Like, we have all these different things. Like, just focus on you. Like, we need you, and that sort of a thing. And it feels like maybe sometimes they have too many cooks, right? And from Nerds' interview saying like they're not on the same page yet after being 3 or 4 months together, that just tells you like there's too many people with opinions.
Yeah.
Right? And that's shouldn't be the case because you have the IGL and the coach. They determine the way you play the game. Other guys can have input, and everyone should be listened to, but the buck has to stop somewhere. Someone makes a decision and decides, right? And that's how you're going to play, and the players will either adapt to that or they will be replaced. That's how it's supposed to be. But with Liquid, I mean, historically the issue has been giving players too much power sometimes, and not having that top-down sort of an organization within the top-down hierarchy within the squad itself. And I think it's biting them in the ass right now. And yeah, hearing things like we were exhausted from the boot camp. Some players were exhausted from the boot camp individually. I mean, that's just sort of Twist hinting at what he wants the org to do, right? Like that seemed like a message to someone about who he thinks is at fault for their loss.
Yeah, I guess Liquid is a weird one because same as you, I never thought they would go through. I didn't think they would be 0-3 and I think they were close enough to beating Mouse. Unfortunately, there's something cursed with 5v3s at this point because they did have a 5v3 on a match point as well on Mirage, and then Torji decided to go huge. But it is weird for me as well because I love the Shui pickup and the fact that they announce the fact that he's going to be the permanent IGO. You're pretty much setting yourself up for success in the next couple years and showing people that you recognize who the players that you should be building around are, because I think high quality IGLs are not easy to find nowadays, and most of them are with pretty solid contracts locked somewhere, of course locked in a nice way, not locked in FURIA way, or well, old FURIA way. Now is good. But I like the pickup. I just
Now it's
think
consensual.
yeah, now it's consensual. We're talking we're talking some Stockholm syndrome here. But yeah, I think it was weird as well picking up Shui and being shocked that Naf is going to be in a tough spot as well without anyone sacrificing anything. Because and that's the reason I actually want to defend Naf here in a way, because I think he hasn't been playing well. Obviously, worst season of his career. But what is to be expected when you put Naf on a team with an IGL that's pretty space taking and needs his place, Twists, Nerds, and Ultimate, who's an OPER and is playing the OP like a rifle a lot of the time, and he's ultra aggressive as well. I think like unless you get someone else to make some sacrifices, the team was never meant to be in that way. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna say that, even though Ultimate had a crazy Mirage against Mouse, and I recognize it, I just don't think he's I just don't love him on that team. I think another OPER could help out, and obviously there's going to be changes coming up with NAF as well. But I will add one team to, well, actually I will add two teams from my side now to the disappointments list. I think for Aurora there isn't much to be added, and as you said, it's really weird to determine what went wrong. But that BO1 against G2, I think, was their end. For me, 3D Max and VP are the disappointing ones, and the reason I'm saying VP here is because I initially, before the start of the major, didn't have any expectations of them, because obviously there's a lot of rumors that Electronic is not going to be the IGO quite soon, and he's going to get replaced, and there was guys like Lear from the Miga even being thrown into the conversation for that. So in my eyes, Virtus.pro with that iteration was a dead team going into the major, but then they go 3-0 in the first stage. They beat Mouse in the first game. They beat Legacy as well in a really scrappy matchup. And I'm saying, in that time, I'm thinking Virtus.pro is not coming up with anything too creative or crazy in the way that they play, but they had a lot of things adapted from other tier 1 teams in their game plan in stage 2 and against Mouse as well on Mirage. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, they're not trying to come up with their own stuff, but at least they're doing what others are doing, and they have the firepower. So in my eyes, the moment they're 2-0, I have expectations, and then they were able to tone it down a bit against Legacy, and I guess go down to their level and play that scrappy CS and show that they can shoot. And then, in my eyes, that Pain matchup was just, excuse the pun, was straight up Pain. I don't really care what happens next. I think Virtus.pro I can't say they deserved to beat Pain, because if Pain beat VP, they deserve to go into the next stage, and they beat 3D Max as well. So they had a tough run for it, and they were 0-2. But if you're a team like Virtus.pro and you start 2-0 and you beat Mouse and you beat an underdog in a BO1, I guess you can excuse them for the games against FURIA and Vitality, and it's a tough draw. But I think the expectations were raised, at least for me, after stage 2 and the first 2 games. So in the end, it was a bit sour seeing everyone go AFK on Dust 2 after a map that they won on Inferno quite one-sidedly, pretty much up until Pain got up to 12 rounds, and then they started playing. I don't know what is your take on VP? Did you expect anything out of them going into this?
No, not at all. I was really surprised that they stormed through stage 2, and then here they were able to beat Mouse, and they were 2-0. Electronic seemed to have played better individually.
Yeah.
But then they got wrecked by FURIA. I mean, that wasn't competitive whatsoever. They were never going to beat Vitality. And then against Pain, I think they were favored at that point, but perhaps the pressure of going from 2-0 to 2-2 maybe getting to them. I don't know, but yeah, it didn't seem like they managed to make it work. And I don't know if what's going to happen with Electronic, if he's going to be replaced. I said when he joined and became the IGL, I mean, this is his last chance. It feels like in tier one CS. Because if this doesn't, you had the Cloud9
Yeah,
experiment, then Virtus.pro, and it's gone from bad to worse in a way, and now it's IGLing. So if that doesn't work, I mean, what's left for him? It will have to be some lower tier, Russian team to sort of build his way back up. And I'm not even sure that Electronic is a guy who would want to do that, right?
sure.
So we'll see what the aftermath of this performance is. If you just look at the results, you would say, oh yeah, VP. I mean, one game away from playoffs. That's a good result for them, all things considered. But if you add the context of them being 2-0 and the FURIA and the pain game, then it's still a little bit disappointing
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, I think it really is. Regardless of whether changes were coming or not, I think it is. And for one, Icy played really well as well. He was great in clutches. So I thought they were gonna make it. Unfortunately, didn't. Pain capitalized on the insane amount of mistakes from two teams, and the other one that I wanted to talk a little bit about is 3D Max. But here it's not because I expected 3D Max to make playoffs. It's just because I expected 3D Max to beat Pain because I do think fundamentally they are a better team, and then I just see Body run in situations where the team could win it, they could slow it down, but they lose a couple rounds, and then Body feels the urge to just start running around and make plays, and he's just leaving them in 4v5s on minute 35, 5 buy rounds in a row. So I guess I was disappointed by the way that they went out, but not by the fact that they didn't make it, because as you said, it's the same as it is for VP in a way. You look at 3D Max, you're like, well, when they're in the third stage of a major, they won one game, they probably could have won a second, but it's not a massive disappointment that they're not making it into the playoffs, unless we look at the way that they got out. Now we're gonna move into the teams that made it. Which is the beginning of the, I guess, playoff conversation. But other than Pain, is there someone that we are really surprised made it into the playoffs? Because for Pain, this is the first time in the Orcs history. For Bigu's era, they just got DGT 1 month ago. For a lot of people, they probably shouldn't have even made it through stage 2, and they made it into the playoffs now. Is there someone else that surprised you, or maybe Pain didn't surprise you at all as well? Maybe you just knew that adding DGT would make them, a great team.
Well, Pain was definitely a surprise because they were losing a ton of games, and I know some of them were with a stand-in, some of them were with a coach
Yeah.
as sort of an emergency sub, so it's not all with the full lineup, but still, you're not going to have much confidence going into the tournament. I think you look at the teams that they played, Nemiga, 3D Max, and VP. I think that's what sort of favored them in a way, what allowed them to win, because there's no like who is the VP is the toughest team that they faced after they went down to 0-2. So definitely surprising that they're in the playoffs. Not as much when you see the teams that they play. I think Furia going 3-0 is a bigger surprise for me.
What's your take on that? What do you think about Molodoy and Nikinder, Furia, and Fallen being a support rifle now?
I mean, props to them, man. It was a risky move, especially with Molodoy, who didn't have any tier 1 experience, not much competitive experience at all, and they just pulled the trigger, decided they need to go for something. Fallen relinquishing the op role, being just a rifling IGL for I don't want to say first time in his career, but first time in a long time. And adding Gekindar, who his stock was super low before Furia picked him up from his time in Team Liquid, and they had a great run in Astana. Then Dallas, not so much, but once you take into account the crazy travel that they had to go through, you can cut them some slack. And then at the major, they've just been lights out, and Molodoy and Yekinder are both playing really well. And I said, Yekinder, for me, he's the Russell Westbrook of CS.
Right.
You're going to live by him and die by him. And when he's playing well, dude, Furia can be pretty scary to go up against, because we've been talking. You asked me about Molodoy and Yekinder. I mean, we're not even talking about Cerato and
Yeah.
Yuri, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not talking about Cerato, who's been the best Brazilian player for a long time. And that's perfect for them, right? Like, when they have two aggressive players like Kindar and Molodoi, it frees out space for them to be more passive, more lurky, which is where they do their best work. Yuri, I've criticized him a couple of years back. He really fell off and he became a bit of a liability for Furia because he had some important spots on the map, but he's had a resurgence. Some of the changes and the role and position swapping really did wonders for him. So yeah, I mean, it's been really impressive. You could say the best of one wins are the more impressive ones
Yeah.
against the more impressive opposition, but still, you have to win those, and then just completely stomping VP. They'll be going into the playoffs with a lot of confidence. They're going up against Spain. They're a
Yeah.
big favorite for me in that game, and that side of the bracket is just wild. I know we'll get into it a little bit later,
Yeah.
but I think Furia being so dominant is one of the surprises, and another one would have to be FaZe. I mean,
Sure.
I put them in my pickems, but more so because I wanted them to be there,
Yeah.
because it's such a cool storyline. And also, no one wants to play against FaZe in the playoffs. Like 100%. You don't want to go up against Simple because everyone knows, what if they catch fire, right?
Yeah.
Like they did in Shanghai when they were completely written off. They were terrible. They were a dead team, really. And that's probably why they sort of played so well in the end. But they just switched to a different gear when they're in that arena, when they're, in front of the crowd, when they're in the playoffs. They seem to be vibing, right? I mean, Simple is the fifth highest rated player of the event. He's their
Yeah.
highest rated player. I mean, that's just mental for a guy who hasn't really played CS2 all that much. I mean, his best map is Anubis somehow. He
And he's
hasn't
got
even
less than
played.
50 officials on it, by the way, or something like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So you see that they beat Mao's Legacy, okay, and then the win against Mongols is just classic FaZe, just
Yeah.
coming back on map one, and that's the FaZe bullshit that was missing for a long time. Like, they lost that spark, and I think Kerrigan definitely knew what he was doing with getting Simple for Brokey, just trying to reignite that, knowing that it's gonna be wild, but hey, that's kind of where we do our best work. And yeah, I'm super happy that they're in there. I think it's going to make for a extremely exciting playoffs. Um, and I don't they could do anything in this major. Like, I wouldn't put anything beside them because, as I said, when you're on the other side and you're playing and Simple has, let's say a 1v2 or some crazy clutch, and they're getting hyped up and Kerrigan's walking through smokes and catching timings, right? You're like, oh my God, it's happening. Like they're
Yeah.
just hit, they can hit that flow state, right? It feels like easily. And Frozen's playing, everyone's playing well. And that's the scary part about FaZe. If they're coming online, if they're getting better with each game, getting more reps, oof.
Yeah, Oof is right. I think that's the scary thing with FaZe, because I was thinking about it before the start of the event, and same as you. I think for a lot of people, it was just the hope that we'd see them in the playoffs, because that would be entertaining as hell, right? The scary part now is that I think they themselves believe that they can actually beat everyone in the playoffs. And with those guys, this is the thing. And with Simple individually, I think this is the scariest thing, because maybe in the beginning, because obviously he's got a champion's mentality, right? A winner's mentality. But when you haven't played for such a long time, you probably would try and be a little bit more reasonable. You're not gonna go into it. Well, he will go into it and say, I want to play Zaiwu and show him what's up. But realistically speaking, he probably didn't think he'd gonna come into the major, or maybe he did. Maybe that's why he's Simple. But I think now, after those games, and especially the Mongols matchup, the scary thing is that they are becoming better and better, and he is becoming individually better and better. And after the Mongols matchup, I honestly believe that Simple believes that he can go onto the stage and wreck everyone. I really do think that he believes that right now. And I think this is the scary thing with this team, as you said, is the never die mentality of FaZe. And I think Simple fits really nicely into all of that. I think those guys just believe that they can come back into every single game. Obviously, it would be a completely different ball game if you're playing Vitality. But because we're not really counting what happened against Legacy there, and other than that, they had a really flawless run. But I think what you said is spot on. Let's imagine a world where, let's say, they play against Mouse. Mouse, in the most labored way possible, uh, make it through the main Swiss. They lose maps to Liquid, to Aurora, to Legacy. They barely close it against Legacy, as we said, with some mistakes. And then all I think it takes is for Frozen or Simple to clutch 1-1v3. And by the way, Frozen's been excellent so far this event. I've loved what he's been doing in clutches, and I think he really is taking that next step to becoming maybe even a bigger star for this team than Elish, which is quite sick. But if you're a team like Mouse, or even a team like Mongos, a team like, I don't know, Pain, I'm not even discussing because I think it's a given. But I think all of those guys, the moment that FaZe start getting fired up, those guys are just going to shut down emotionally instantly. So,
I mean, we didn't
yeah.
even. Aliir is playing in front of the home crowd. I mean,
Yeah.
FaZe was already going to be the team
Yeah.
everyone cheers
And
for.
FaZe,
They're an
it's an
NA
American
or
organization as well.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's going to be on their side. They're playing the Mongols in the first game, who they beat in groups. Mongols, who are notorious for choking in playoffs and in arena games, right? So I think that side of the bracket is wide open. I mean, FURIA FaZe in the semi could get interesting because FaZe is still shaky. I mean,
Sure.
they're not super well oiled or anything like that. There's a lot of firepower, it turns out, on that Furia team, so that could be a pretty crazy semifinal. And then you look at the other side of the bracket. I don't know. I just have a feeling that Vitality won't get to the final. I don't know why.
Really?
I think Spirit will beat them in the semifinal, and we'll get FaZe Spirit rematch of the Shanghai Major,
Yeah.
and FaZe will get their revenge, and we'll have Simple beat the Major MVP in 2025. That's just crazy, but I don't know. I think I'm just cheering for. I'm obviously cheering for FaZe
Sure.
in this one, but just the storyline would just be so crazy. It's like, how can you not? And especially when you look at the last major we had in NA. I mean, the
Yeah.
Cloud9
Boston.
miracle run in Boston.
Yeah.
Imagine FaZe now with another, and it was against FaZe. So there's so many narratives, so many crazy storylines that are out there where it's like the script writers just want it to happen, right?
Yeah, I guess it's when you say it that way, it is crazy. I guess that would make it even more poetic if it's a FaZe Vitality final though, right? Because FaZe back then was the favorite, and now they are the underdogs, which was Cloud9. Um, I I think it's weird because same as you, I think going into the quarterfinals for me, there's a really clear. I'm just gonna say it out here. I don't think there's gonna be any surprises in the quarterfinals, and I think you can, based on what you said, you agree with me. I think we were looking at Spirit, Vitality, FaZe, and Furia winning their quarterfinals. And interestingly enough, FaZe is probably the only one that could go wrong out of those, but I still don't think it will on the stage, especially after they beat them in the BO3. Uh, the script writes itself, but I'm trying to the war that I'm fighting with myself is whether this is my own delusion that I really want to see Simple win the major and just show one massive middle finger in the face of everyone that doubted that he could be back, or if I'm just being
Moses.
crazy. Yeah. For example, I don't know. But that's what I want to see as well. I think this is what everyone wants to see, right? But then, at the same time, is that reasonable? Are we being a little bit outrageous because of how cool that entire storyline has been so far?
I don't think it's outrageous. I mean, their side of the bracket, they're the favorite because of the experience and
Yeah.
everything, right? Like, I mean, they're a favorite against the Mongols, and then against Furia, they would be favored by a little bit, at least in my eyes, from the experience and all of that. And Kerrigan is also very well versed. He's the best IGL out there to play with a stand-in. I mean, he's won more tournaments than anyone else, S tier tournaments with a
He's won
standing. He's
tier
won
one
tournaments
tournaments
with
with
Croman.
Croman. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, right. And Exist is just a player, not even an IGL.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that FaZe would be in the final. It is a little
Yeah.
bit unreasonable to think they'll win.
Yeah.
I will say that, but I think Vitality is obviously the worst opponent that they could face.
I think Spirit
But
is
also
better, to be
for
fair.
but also for Vitality, man, it's just the pressure would be so crazy
Sure.
for them too, because you're going up against FaZe, who has nothing to lose.
Mm.
They're there with a stand-in. You're the best team in the world. You won the last 5, 6 tournaments. Now you're at the major. You're one best of 3 away from having the best season in the history of Counter-Strike. In the 25 years that this game has existed, you will have the best season if you can win this one game.
Yeah.
All you have to do is be simple on the other side. And we've seen, Vitality a couple of times sort of, they can choke too. I mean, they choked in the Melbourne final when they needed to win the Grand Slam, right? Just Falcons choked harder
Yeah.
in the end, you know. Specialists at losing 5v3s, it feels like.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they were
Low
able
blow.
to eventually grind it out and win that game and win the Grand Slam. So here, if that happens and you have a FaZe on the other side who, if they're already in the grand final and now their confidence is through the roof, they're playing with nothing to lose. So that's a dangerous prospect for Vitality. And I think Vitality, of course, they have tough games ahead of them. Navi maybe not so much, but whether Spirit or Mouse comes, like that's a really tough game. That's sort of the final before the final for Vitality. But meanwhile, they're just praying FaZe loses on the other side, because anyone else who comes, it's fine. They got it in the bag. But FaZe is just, you don't want to see them on that other side.
Yeah, you never know, right? That is the thing. When you're playing against FaZe, the final could come through, and it could go 3 maps, and they could just crumble the way that they did against Navi in Copenhagen last year, right on Inferno. But then it could be a really tight game as well. And as you said, the pressure is just going to keep on building up as we go through the playoffs for Vitality. I still think there is something in what you said about Spirit, though. I think a Spirit Vitality matchup would be a lot more interesting than. Obviously, we are expecting it to be interesting because Spirit is one of the best teams so far this year, one of the top 4. But I think Spirit do look really scary right now, and not only because of Dong. I think Shiro's actually been playing fairly decently so far at the major. Obviously, it could be different when we go onto the stage, but yeah, as you said, pressure is just gonna keep on building up because as much as Vitality set, and I think it takes some pressure off that finally losing a BO1 that's really insignificant doesn't make them think about the streak. They're still gonna be thinking about winning the event. And from here on out, what happens if you lose? I don't know. You lose one map against Spirit, or you lose one map against FaZe in a potential final. Then it could be difficult. But yeah, I suggest we lock it. We lock it in. I'm just gonna ask you the final question because you already lingered towards it. But who is winning this? Who are you putting your money on?
FaZe Clan, FaZe up, baby. I want to believe. It would be such a crazy cool storyline. Feels like the stars are aligning for them with this bracket too. They'll get, they're playing Mongols who they already beat in the tournament in the playoffs. Then it's Pain or Furia. They get 2 games on stage to warm up, to get hyped up. Simple. He's back. He's feeling it, right? He's enjoying himself. He's a good teammate. Elige in front of the home crowd is having a historic performance. Rain and Frozen, Rain and Carrigan, just, doing their thing. 50 years old, back at another major grand final. Frozen is going to find redemption for Shanghai. FaZe Clan going to lift the trophy.
Okay, you heard it here first. Well, probably not. Probably you heard it somewhere where Duncan said it the moment that the moment that they announced that Simple's coming back. He probably said it like 2 months ago, but you hear it here as well. Okay, going for FaZe Clan. I will say I still believe Vitality will do it. I really want FaZe to do it, but I still think Vitality will get that major. And I think they will make it look good. I hope if it is a grand final with FaZe, it goes 3 maps because I think that's going to be hella entertaining. But I really believe that this initial loss to Legacy took a lot of the pressure off, and now they're playing a lot more freed up. And with that warm-up game against Navi, because in my eyes, this is a warm-up game after having watched that BO3 between G2 and Navi, I don't even want to talk about it. I've been scarred for my entire life to come. So I think Vitality will win that one easily, and then going into Spirit Mouse, if they are able to take that one home, I don't think there's any doubt that they will end up winning. And I think for both Spirit and Mouse going into the semifinal, especially if it is Mouse, I think Vitality are winning it 10 out of 10 times. If it's Spirit, I'm leaving a bit of a door for Dong to go crazy and potentially Vitality choke, but I still don't see it happening. So yeah, I guess we'll wait and find out. I guess we'll have to watch and figure out. But thank you for taking the time, and yeah, it was nice talking to you. Of course, you have been doing. I think you've been joining some of the streams of Richard now, right? Watching the the major?
Yeah, a couple of games this last couple of days. I'll probably jump on for the playoffs as well, at least for some of the games. But yeah, the No Majors Club,
Yeah,
always a good spot to hang out.
yeah, the No Majors Club. Okay, so guys, in case you wanna listen to the No Majors Club and watch the games with Janko, with Richard Lewis, and I think there's like 20 more talent that are from tier 1 events that are watching there and sharing their opinions, expertise, and whatnot, and chill out. You can go and check that out, and yeah, I guess follow Talking Counter on Spotify as well. But
Hell
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. Follow that. I've been hitting that on the treadmill. Not nowhere else, but on the treadmill is a really good buddy. But yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, pleasure
Thanks for
talking to
having
you.
me.
Thank you everyone for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.